Alright, so we've got our fly already started. Like I said, I've gone through and did some X wraps here, X around our eye, make sure that that is really secure. We're using a size 8/0 orange Vivas thread as our construction for this fly to hold it all together. Now when we start this fly off, we want to really focus on one very particular thing, is the egg sac and or some orange attraction. So what we're going to use here is I'm going to use some Senyo's laser dub in fluorescent hot orange. We're going to tie this in right behind the eye, snip out some of that material. We're just going to get this pulled around the shank, and while we're tying this fly, we're trying to keep a pretty uniform body because we are going to have to hackle around this. So we don't want any kind of weird different size shapes while we're going around this. So you're going to see a lot of this is going to try and stay about as uniform as possible, so we can have a clean wrap around the shank. So we've got our orange Senyo's. I'm going to pinch some of this stuff out. I'll reseat this hook on here real quick. We're going to pinch some of this Senyo's out. We don't want this sticking out really far, but still we want it to be a little misshapen. We don't want a clean cut here, so just a real easy, just a little bit that extends probably about a half a hook shank back on the back of the fly. We're going to use our flash now, because we want this flash to be contained in the center of the fly. We don't want this flash to really finagle its way around the hook shank during casting. There's a lot of bugginess, and we tie a weed guard in to kind of prevent a lot of action from some of the legs and things on this fly. What we're going to do is we're going to use one strand of black crystal flash, and we're going to use 2 strands of the gray ghost crystal flash. We are just going to bend these around the hook shank, double them up. So basically we've got 2 strands of black crystal flash, and we've got 4 strands of the gray ghost. And I just let these things layer in right on top of our Senyo's lasered up here. Now typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do about a hook shank or 2, but I'm going to go a hook shank and a half. That's kind of like the real sweet spot on this, so it doesn't stick out too far. So about right there. We're going to allow this to just drape over the back of that Senyo's. Now, next thing we're going to do here is we're going to give this fly a little bit of some character around this, and we're going to use our coyote. Now, not so much the tips of the coyote. I like the underfur of the coyote for this part of the fly because it is very, very wavy in the water, has a lot of action, a lot of character. So I'm going to take a nice piece of coyote dubbing with some of the tips and stuff attached. It gives it a little bit of character as well as to it. I'm going to strip out some of this base end right here. That way we don't have some of this really thick, just under fur that's right there where you snipped it off from the hide from. I'm going to tie this in on 2 places. I want this to get about around the hook shank as possible. So we're going to just kind of mend this around as much as we can. We're going to get a loose wrap around this hair so we can kind of spin that coyote hair somewhere around the hook shank and manipulate it a little bit. And the way you want this is you don't want to hide the egg sac, or you don't want to hide that orange coloration. And that's why I like the coyote underfur. You can do this with fox, you can do this with a couple other different types of furs, but you want the tip ends. That's why coyote works so good. Same thing with jackal, is that it's got more of a tan kind of coloration to it when you get in towards the tips, and it creates this translucent effect where you're not really hiding the orange. You're doing a good job of disguising some of it, but you're blending it in really well. So next portion on top of this is I like to hide this in a little bit of a clump of blue. So I'm going to use some of this Fish and Slinky, which is this blue material right here, about as thick as a hook shank after it's been wrapped a few times. We're going to cut some of this material, and we're just going to kind of wind this around. This is more of a, kind of like a unique hair or supreme hair or whatnot. And we're just going to kind of get this around the hook shank just to give it a little bit of kind of translucent look or so to it, and get this around the hook shank. Not a whole lot to it, it's just something to give it a more of a wispy, grainy kind kind of a feel to around that. Not a whole lot, but just gives it a little bit of extra arm and reaction while it's in the water. A little something else to wave around. All right, next portion of this fly is we're going to use this, we're tying similar to like a crab pattern. And we're going to use some tan barred right here, some rooster hackle. And we're going to take 4 feathers out of this. We're going to use 2 feathers on each side to build a crab arm-like profile. And we're going to put these right on either side of them. So let's take our 2 pieces here. We're going to go right here on this side and then opposite the other. Don't want it to come out too far. We're just going to make sure we've got a nice little body. We're going to throw some rubber legs inside of this, so there's going to be quite a bit of movement coming off the back end of this fly. And I'm going to wrap this all in. Just nice, good, not super tight wraps. We're just making sure everything's held together. Get this, cut these fibers out right there. And then we're going to repeat the exact same steps on the opposite side. Coming here with our saddle hackle again, make sure that they're even. We want that to kind of drape out the exact same way. So come back in, capture this in, make sure we get this all even down on the hook shank. And just some loose wraps, make sure we've got this all completely captured in. And the arms are basically the same length on either side. Okay, now we've got that captured in. Let's go ahead and get our snip and clean that up just a bit. And this fly is a little, it's a little all over the place right now, and that's kind of the point. We want these crab flies to really kind of have a lot of action in the water. And kind of the points when it's sitting down on their bottom, you want a lot of this color to show through, but you also want a lot of activity going on. These redfish are going to come up and they're going to hover over these crabs. They're going to be looking at this in its face. So you want this to be about as buggy as possible to entice a redfish while you are not twitching this to take a bite of this crab. I've had them take them, and we've had a lot of guides out there saying that they can cast a moving redfish and have no problem with them coming at them. But a lot of the times a redfish is going to zoom up on this crab, take a look at it, and they're going to come down and suck it up. So what we're going to do next is we're going to make our collar around this using our fluorescent blue marabou. And we're going to make sure, we're going to cut us off a nice little piece here. We're going to go around this collar just like that and drape it right over the top. We don't want it to extend really as much far as the orange that we've got there. We want it to just kind of cover it up just a touch. Blue and orange are just too prevalent of colors for bayou crabs, with blue crabs in particular. I'm going to tie this down. And so not trying to win a beauty contest or anything just yet. We're just trying to get all of our materials around the hook shank. Let me grab a little bit more of this, and we're going to go on the underside with some more of this marabou, and we're going to create this on the bottom, the same exact effect. That way we've got both sides of this fly covered with this blue marabou. All right, same thing right here on the back end. Let's go ahead and tie that in and capture it. And just the top side and the bottom side on here, because that marabou is going to drape around the fly pretty well. Let's go ahead and trim this out, and then we'll clean this up and capture this down. Now this can be sized down a little bit if you're throwing for smaller redfish like South Carolina, North Carolina. We've had a lot of experience with some guides and some folks over in that area that have been fishing. Those are smaller, like tidal flats, and those folks are, throwing in some different kind of water than we are over here in Louisiana and Alabama. So, sizing this down to a size 4 can be done. The material just has to be tied a little bit more sparse. And so this is on a size 2 hook, and so these are really meant for when you're throwing. Got a saw off right here. These are really meant for when you're throwing over in Louisiana and we're looking for big redfish. This is the crab for that. All right, so we're going to tie in our glass bead eyes right on the outside of this marabou. I want this glass bead eye to extend right there just past the hook shank, not much further than that right there. So we're going to just go ahead and kind of capture that one in, and we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So right here, same spot, capture this in. Now, I didn't measure these to size, but basically, just like some of our other flies, we want this captured and tied down right behind the eye. Keep these pretty consistent. So let's see, we got those together, got them tied down. There we go. What I want is a wide body on this because we're going to be wrapping around some of that dub brush here in just a minute, and that wide body gives the crab a little bit more of the character that we want from it. So building a nice wide body. Now these crab eyes, we want them to come out, we want them to stick out, we don't want them to be just stuck to the shank right there. So we're going to pinch this crab eye out, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make that crab eye poke out. Same thing on the opposite side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead and come up to the eyes so we can kind of capture some of those fibers, or some of that fiber where we were going around. All right, so there we go. We've got this tied around the shank. We've got our feathers, we've got our flash, we've got our orange egg sac, we've got a nice body and a setup. So last part that we need to do on here is legs. We need some movement. This fly needs to have some action. So we're going to tie this fly. We want this action. This fly is going to sit in the water upside down like this with the hook shank point sticking up. So what we want here is we want this fly to have those legs draped off the bottom. So we're going to tie them in over the top. Typically about 1-2 hook shanks in length right there, coming right off the back end. We'll capture that in on the top here. Fold this over. Grab both of our legs. We're going to pinch these all down and wrap these back over. Get them about as flat as you possibly can on there. I want these legs to just kind of hang off the back. I'm going to go ahead and we can probably taper these things up and taper them out. We're the exact same distance right there. You want these legs to hang just slightly past the crab arms. Some of our other patterns, I don't want them hanging out that far, but for this pattern, because of the dub brush that we're about to put on this, I want those to hang off a little bit further because that dub brush is going to keep everything very contained. So there's this top side of this, our eyes, our legs hanging into the middle. We've got everything that we want on this fly. It is time to start on our dub brush. So now there's some other dub brushes that could be used. I like using the Sightcast dub brush. The material's a little hard to source, so you can use some Rico Pelosi or the EP fiber stuff as well. But we're going to tie this in right here using the wire portion of this, tie it down flat, and this fly is very buggy, so there is not a whole lot of material that we're not tying legs or anything in like a merkin crab. We want this fly to be ultra buggy. All right, so we're going to come around 1. There's going to be quite a few wraps on this, so you are going to have to separate these as you tie them. Keep brushing these fibers back. 2, you do not want to trap any of these fibers down. 3. Keep brushing these fibers back. 4 wraps. And part of why we're using the orange fiber and stuff on here is inside of this, since this fiber is really thin and we are kind of wrapping around making it pretty dense, you still will see the orange body through this. And kind of, when redfish are sitting there looking at some of these crabs, they see this blue. Of course, it keys them in on a particular type of crab, but this orange underneath with the thread kind of resonates, and I see a lot of redfish come and take off after this particular color scheme on this fly because I think that orange shows through, especially when this fly gets wet, the orange arms, and looks like an egg sac. I'm going to keep on wrapping through. There's a few more wraps until we get all the way to the eye. There's another wrap. And there we go, one final wrap. We're gonna come over on this opposite side. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut this out. So that right there. Pinch these materials out, get our wire. Come over here on top of this eye and capture this in. And like some of our other flies, I like to figure 8 around the eye. Make sure we've got this real good captured in. Nothing worse, and this is where a lot of construction of the fly can go wrong. You'll see a lot of these dub brushes wrapped around and this wire captured in, and the wire is not captured in correctly. And the fly will unravel after one fish. If you've had any experience fishing for redfish, they do not hit fish and slightly touch it like a carp or something like that. Redfish hit a fly like a freight train. And I'm gonna brush all these fibers out, make sure we didn't get anything caught up inside. Like I said, this is exceptionally buggy material. A lot of action, a lot of movement, different color schemes. We tie this in an olive version, tie this in an LSU type version, a yellow and a purple, tie this in a brown, and a tan version to match the hatch depending on where you're fishing. Alright, so got a lot of this buggier material and stuff out of the way. So we've got 2 things that we need to accomplish next. We need to, 1, make sure we get a nice orange egg sac looking head. We're going to do this and accomplish it with the wire, or with our Vivas thread here. And we're going to put on some rubber legs. These rubber legs, we want them draping backwards. We don't want them splayed out. We want them coming directly backwards. We're going to tie them right behind the eye with this bead here, so we can have them running off the back. Wrap those in directly there. Pull this next set over. I'll go over the top of these. I'm going to come over these beads right there where they kind of sit, holding on either side, and continue to enhance the size of that head. Those are very well tied down. And now, as we've got these arms that are on either side, make sure that they're even, make sure they drape outwards. We're going to take some 30-pound mono, and we're going to tie this in. There's a bunch of different ways of doing this. Some people take a V and go around this direction. I use a cauterizing tool, so just whatever's the easiest way to tie this in. I'm going to come in right through the eye hook. I'm going to build up a head because I kind of want to build this this particular shape up on this fly for this head. Go ahead and cut that a little short there because we're going to anchor this thing up as we go around and whip finish around the back of this. Use our cauterizing tool. Go ahead and come down right here. There we go. Whoop. Get that out of there. Now I've got a clean weed guard. I'll pull this up. This is where we're going to get into finishing this fly. We'll come around this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Remember, using 8/0 thread, so it's not that big of a deal. You're not building up a massive thread dam on the head of this. We're going to come around, make sure we get all our fibers out of here, and get our whip finish in. 2, 3, get that whip finish in. Make sure you didn't trap any fibers while you're whip finishing. 1, 2, 3. Got our fly right there. Let's go ahead and trim that out. All right, next thing to do is we're just going to clean this fly, brush this thing out. Like I said, this is a buggy fly. That is the purpose. There's a lot of surface area, a lot of meat, kind of holding this crab pattern out there and this wide crab body with a lot of this material by doing it like this. So we're going to get in here with a little bit of solar res. UV resin. I'm going to hit all this thread. Make sure we got all this out of the way while we're painting this up. this really nice and coat it. Come around here on the back side. And coat this thread down here as well. All right, little UV light. Go ahead and kind of get a quick cure on that. The best cure absolutely is going to be the cure that's going to be out sitting in the sun. If you sit this outside for a little while and let it cure, if you're using a UV resin, I guess you could use some Zap-A-Gap or some other things if you're trying to get this done pretty quickly. I like a UV head on this that is properly cured, because if you're throwing this into redfish and structure and dragging this over oyster beds or hidden dock pilings or something, if you're trying to fish for redfish under structure, then this nice cured head will give you quite a bit of longevity to this fly. Next what we're going to do is we're going to check all of our legs. We don't want these back legs to be longer than our front legs by any means, but we do want them to be longer than the shank of the hook, particularly past the eyes and draping over to where the claws are. So let's check our distance here. And these need to be cleaned up just a touch. Right there, those are about basically as even as they need to be. Maybe clean them up just a touch here. And there we go. You see some of this bugginess, some of these fibers that hang out right here. You've got our claws, our crab kind of pattern, just a big, buggy, large profile. You know, you see these crabs, they take up a large profile. If you've ever gone through the flats and seen them, you know, this stuff lays down pretty thin, which is what's great about it, is that you get that crab kind of like that profile of a crab-like body where it's not real puffed up, it's not real unnatural, but you've got these legs that drape over, which we're gonna have to color here in just a second. But when you're looking at a redfish down on this fly, and this fly is sitting in the grass, and it is looking on to you, you've got eyes poking back at you, you've got crab arms up in a defensive manner, you've got an orange attraction sac, and you've got some flash right here in the center. This is an angry looking buggy fly for a redfish to run up on. And as it sits in the water and that coyote hair pulses here and all this, with the current that you're probably throwing it in, all this is pulsating around it. It looks like a crab sitting there in the water, ready for a redfish to come and try and take it on. So let's go ahead and tie this back into our vise, and we're gonna get our blue. You can use processed blue. Another one we use is a metallic Sharpie, is a metallic or a neon Sharpie. That gives us a little bit of that fluorescent kind of color that shines off into the water. We're just going to stick with this, we're going to stick with our chart pack markers, keeping it real simple and easy. I'm going to go ahead and take all of these legs that are right here. We're going to pull them out, get them even. And go through, we're just going to bar this almost all the way down. 4 bars there. Flip our fly over, grab these legs that are on the bottom part of the fly. Make sure we get all those even. Almost. Pinch all this together. Pull it out. Let's try and get about the same thing on the other side. So 1, 2. Now I know Hairline has got some already barred rubber legs. I believe they have some orange and blue already, which would make this process a heck of a lot easier. And 4 right there on the end. And there we go. We've got our blue and orange barred legs on both sides of this fly. Right here, this is our top profile of what this fly looks like. Very crabby, very leggy, lots of movement. Our fly on the opposite side on the bottom. Same thing. I mean, redfish isn't really seeing much of this. I guess you could see it on the fall, but like I said, it's just an extremely buggy fly. This is more or less what you're looking for. You're looking for this side, a lot of action, staring that redfish in the face as they come up and they run up on this fly and start inspecting it. As this fly pulses in the water, a quick jerk or movement like this, and all that reaction bite is all you need to entice a nice Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, and in smaller patterns, North Carolina and South Carolina tidal flats redfish. That is the Alabama Coastal Outdoors, or ACO Marsh Monster.